Hey folks, this is Kalani. It's been a busy week in World of Warcraft. Hunters received a huge class rework that fixes a lot of the problems that they had throughout Dragonflight. We've got a huge buff to bronze and thread gains in WoW Remix, and we have our first look at the true endgame potential of delves and the higher difficulties that will be on offer, as well as our first peek into the Nerubian Palace raid. There's a lot to talk about this week, so let's break it all down. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up this week, we have some great news for anyone still farming bronze for gear upgrades or collectible unlocks in the WoW Remix event. There's a new buff that is currently active for everyone and doesn't seem to have any limits. The Time Runner's Mastery buff will increase your bronze earnings from any bronze cache by 100%, as well as increasing your threads earned from spools by 200%. So any activity that rewards a cache, like daily quests or killing raid bosses, basically just doubled in value. This is going to make farming bronze much faster and easier for every kind of player, so if you still have some gear upgrades you want to get or some collectibles to pick up, it's only going to be faster from here on out. What's hilarious is that this buff also counts towards any caches you were holding on to, like these chaps from Reddit who had a full bank of legendary caches. Now that's what I call hindsight. As for the threads buff, this will triple the number of threads you're getting from any spool source, which increases the rate at which your characters will power up from all activities as well. This should also make leveling ults even faster because your ults will keep powering up if you're doing those daily quests or obtaining spools from any other source. And then as a nice little extra bonus, the rep gains for Xiao Hao were increased by 700% to let you farm and grind that reputation much faster. So whether you want to finish up that reputation or earn some more bronze or threads, these new changes will make everything so much easier. As we get closer to the end of the Remix event, I actually expect this buff to increase in power, to give the latecomers even more of a kickstart with farming bronze and powering up in the event. We're about 1/3 of the way through at this point, so I imagine we may see another large buff maybe around the 30 days left mark, just to give everyone an extra boost to finish up their Mr. Pandaria Remix event goals. How do you feel about the new bronze and thread buff? Is this enough to get you back to farming bronze, or maybe even playing WoW Remix for the first time? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now in other news, last week we were promised some hunter changes in this week's beta build, and oh boy, the dev team did not disappoint. It's more than just a handful of changes. Hunters got a big rework which leaves them in a very strong spot moving forward. Here's a quick comparison of the class trees on live servers and the new class tree that we got to play around with this week. As you can see, a lot has moved around, quite a few talents have been removed or changed, and a lot of talents were moved into the spec trees where it made sense, like a lot of the kill command and the pet boosting talents. Sentinel Owl was also completely removed, and Serpent Sting is no longer going to be its own spell. There are also going to be some big defensive buffs. We can pick up 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest, which can be on a 90-second recharge and provide a 30% damage reduction buff for 8 seconds. That's already pretty good, but then we can also pick up various buffs to Exhilaration, like we could before. There's an option to cleanse poison and disease effects with Feign Death or Turtle, and you can even get an extra damage reduction buff from Camouflage. That last one will definitely be more niche, but having the option is interesting. Then there are even more defensive and healing options to pick up across the hero talents, so hunters are going to have a lot of options to stay alive in the War Within, which was one of their problems throughout Dragonflight. On the DPS side of things, for class talents, we can easily pick up Explosive Shot for any spec, and Explosive Shot no longer overrides itself, so if you apply Explosive Shot to something that already has it, it just instantly blows up and deals damage, which will be very important when we get to the survival tree, but that is a huge change for Explosive Shot in general, and it means that you're never missing out on DPS. There's an attack speed buff which gets doubled when you don't have a pet, so it's going to be better for marksmanship if you run Lone Wolf, and we gain 5% more crit from all sources, which is going to be great for ramping up crit chance. Then there's a passive to boost damage over time effects, which also has a baked-in execute bonus. And then on the utility side, Intimidation can be used without a pet, so you can still use it as marksmanship and affect multiple targets, so you get a cleave stun as well. Binding Shot is back to being a stun. You can easily pick up Explosive Trap or Bursting Shot. Trank Shot can now remove up to 2 magic effects at a time, and there are various movement speed boosts and a handful of other options. So the the class tree is looking pretty good right now. For marksmanship, here's the tree on live compared to the new one we got this week. There are some pretty big changes to tree flow and where talents are located, but some abilities have also been changed quite significantly. You can see that we obtain rapid fire, multi-shot and trick shots much earlier with far fewer points required. Just 2 spare points gets you multi-shot and trick shots, and rapid fire is required to take anything on the left hand side, so good changes there for sure. Lone Wolf was nerfed down to a 5% bonus, which means it won't be as strong in every situation, and we could end up with marksmanship using pets, which could be interesting. The line of sight mechanic from Sentinel Owl was baked into Volley with a new talent, so Volley gives you a damage boost and lets you ignore line of sight, which could be very powerful. Barrage has been moved into the spec tree, and you can now change it to fire rapid fires to up to 5 enemies, which is pretty hilarious and can create some very interesting situations with other talents thrown into the mix. Wailing Arrow is now tied into aim shot, so after you fire 20 wind arrows, your next aim shot will instead be a Wailing Arrow. So that's very nice to cut down on button bloat, but it does give you less control over when you can use Wailing Arrow, which isn't super ideal. But what's really interesting is that the single target and multi-target abilities aren't entirely separated, they're kind of mixed in with each other. So we have Barrage and Wailing Arrow on the left, along with various single target effects, and then Chimera Shot, Hydra's Bite, Volley and Salvo are over on the right, with your staples of multi-shot and trick shots dead center. So you don't have to pick one side or the other for single target or AoE, it's more picking talents in each side to pick up the parts you want and the way you want to play. This means you won't be immediately locked out of quite as many abilities, and it's much easier to switch little things up to try them out. Beast Mastery has some interesting changes too. Here's the tree on live servers versus the new rework we got this week. You can see there are a lot more talents in general, so we're going to have more choices and options. Quite a lot of talents were reduced down to 1 pointers to make room for that, and obviously quite a few talents were removed as well. Animal Companion becomes available immediately in the middle, which follows down to multi-shot, beast cleave and kill cleave, so those are pretty easy to pick up like they were before. Barb Shot leads down the right hand side into various effects that tie into Barb Shot, like Thrill of the Hunt and War Orders. There's a new bleed effect for when your pets crit, which does a lot of damage throughout boss encounters especially. There's a new talent to apply Serpent Sting passively, so either Kill Shot can apply Serpent Sting, or Multi-Shot and Cobra Shot casts can apply Serpent Sting to their targets. Dire Beasts have changed a little bit with a new talent that summons Haiti or Fenrir to do some extra cool stuff. Basilisk Collar is a new damage buff for your pet, which increases for every dot on your target, which creates more value from bleeds and dots, like Serpent Sting. And then there are new talents that let Bloodshed hit more targets or make it provide an even larger single target bonus. It's going to be very interesting seeing which talents end up on top when tuning changes start happening, but it's been really fun to play around with the new options that we have and figure out what kind of different builds you can make. And then survival changed a lot as well. Here's the live tree and the beta tree for comparison. Perhaps the most important note is that there are a lot of interactions with Explosive Shot in this new tree, so Explosive Shot will be a very important part of the Survival Hunter rotation. Various talents reduce the cooldown of Explosive Shot. Explosive Shot can reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bombs. You can get free casts of Explosive Shots, and a lot of other survival talents have been reworked or improved in various ways as well. So survival is actually looking pretty good too, as long as you're okay with the whole mostly melee part and you like throwing bombs. But that's how the Hunter rework is looking so far. I am having a lot of fun tinkering around with the different options, and I think it's shaping up to be a decent set of trees overall. Now moving on, the War Within beta has been chugging along quite nicely, and this week Delves were opened up for endgame testing. Delves are going to be a new seasonal content option that you can play solo or with up to 5 players. The Delves have various tiers of difficulty, and only tier 1 through 3 will be available before season 1 starts, so we haven't seen anything above tier 3 until now. This week the seasonal parts of Delves were opened up for testing, so we can hop in, see how the difficulty will progress and how hard it's going to be, check out some of the rewards, and just see how it all fits together, and whether it will be a good endgame progression alternative to dungeons, raids, and PvP. There are going to be 11 tiers or difficulties of delves for you to work through, so the higher you go, the harder the delves will be, but the rewards are actually going to cap out at tier 8. That's the current plan. So tiers 9 to 11 will be for, achievements and bragging rights by the sound of things, and they will be very hard. So the rewards cap out at tier 8, but you can push up to 11 if you really want to. Tiers 1 and 2 will be available while leveling, Tier 3 opens up at max level, and then Tier 4 and onwards will only be available during Season Season 1, so we won't have access to those until the season starts. Tiers 4 and above also have a new effect in play, Zekfia's Influence, which buffs random groups of mobs in the delve, and if you kill them you'll get extra seasonal progress, but you don't have to kill them, it's just a way to earn more progress if you're willing to take on that extra challenge. Whenever you complete a delve, you'll unlock the next difficulty up, so to unlock tier 6 you have to complete a tier 5 delve, and this unlock is across all delves too, so you'll have to do one delve on tier 5 to unlock every delve on tier 6, which is definitely a good thing. If you had to unlock tier 6 on each delve individually, that would feel absolutely terrible. There is also going to be a special 13th delve that will remain a secret and have no public testing, so just like the last raid boss of each new raid. That means we will have at least one surprise on the delve side of things to look forward to when the new expansion launches. Now sadly, the rewards don't seem to be in place properly. Whenever you hover over the gear rewards for any given tier or difficulty, they're all listed at 363 item level, which obviously isn't correct, so we'll have to wait and see how that part of the progression works, but one very important reward option to point out is the bountiful chests that you can find at the end of a delve. To open any of these chests at the end of your run, you will need a restored coffer key. There seems to be a few ways to get your hands on these keys. You can collect and combine fragments into a key. These fragments drop from treasures, rares, radiant cords, which I'm not too sure what that is, but it sounds like a new type of event, as well as outdoor world events. So we'll be getting a lot of these from different activities, and probably from weekly quests and events as well. They are also rewarded periodically throughout the War Within Renown tracks for the new reputations and factions that we'll be meeting and befriending, so renown farming could end up yielding some great delve rewards as well. And then I'm sure we'll be finding other ways to get these keys too. The great thing about this setup is that the dev team can reward a key from almost any type of content, and it will automatically just make running delves more valuable. It's all going to depend on those item levels though, and how hard the delves are going to be, so I guess we need some clearer info to get the full picture. As you progress through and complete delves, you will also be leveling up your companion. These companions will change from season to season, and we start with Bran Bronzebeard. As they level up, they're going to learn new abilities, so they become more useful in future delves, and then after level 10 they start accruing this new talent, which just seems to be a flat damage increase, so they should end up doing quite a lot of damage and healing and help you climb through the various delve tiers. You can also find and collect combat curios and utility curios, which are basically just like trinkets that you can equip your companions with. So when you interact with the delve supplies, you can select a role for Bran, so DPS or healer, and then equip one combat curio and one utility curio. There are quite a few different effects you can get from these curios, and they also have 4 ranks, so I guess we'll be able to upgrade them somehow as well. So there's quite a bit of customization available for your companion, which should be very helpful if you get stuck on a certain tier of delve. It's also very important to note that delves should contribute to your weekly vault in the War Within. We don't have solid information on those changes just yet, but we do know that the plan for delves is to reward gear on par with heroic raid gear. That may be from the vault, or it may be from the delves themselves, but I'm sure that higher gear will be time gated quite heavily to ensure that other sources of gear remain relevant, so those keys that we mentioned earlier could be a big part of it as well. But that's how delves are shaping up so far. How do you feel about delves in general? Do you think having that solo player option helps fill in a gap at endgame, and what item level rewards do you think delves should provide you with? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And then to round out this video, raid testing for the first War Within raid also started this week. The test itself was a bit of a mess, with many bosses active that weren't part of the test, so we did get a sneak peek at some that we really shouldn't have, but everything got smoothed out eventually. The bosses that were actually there for testing worked pretty well, the fights themselves were well put together with intuitive mechanics and interesting visuals, the fights didn't seem too difficult on heroic mode, which means they will probably be quite a bit easier on normal and LFR, and as always, I am very excited to see how they change for Mythic. The boss rooms are also really cool, and the general scenery and environment of the raid is very interesting. Remember that this is supposed to be the Nerubian Palace, so we're going to see lots of grandeur stuff, lots of large structures, and plenty of spiders and spider themes, but there are also a lot of old god ties in here, with some very nasty looking areas, which definitely points towards some Void or old god story threads. All in all, the raid is shaping up really well, but that's all of the news we have for this week, so that's it for this video. What do you think of the Bronze and Threads buff? Does that encourage you to hop into Remix for the first time, or just to start farming Bronze again? And what do you think of the Hunter rework from what you've seen so far? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description, or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching, folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.